evening and welcome to the Late Debate with Cormac O'Hara. Tonight, a new armed Garda force announced today to tackle gangland crime. Is it a desperate pre-election move or a genuine effort to eradicate a societal scourge? And Sinn Féin say they'll push for a referendum on a united Ireland. We'll discuss the merits of that and more, but first the news with Mícheál Mac Donncha.
Good evening. Gardaí are continuing to search for the 4 men involved in the murder of Eddie Hutch Sr. in Dublin's North Inner City last night. Detectives say that 2 of them fired the shots from handguns that killed Mr Hutch at his home in Ballybough. They have appealed for information on the movements of 2 vehicles used by the men to flee the scene. The Garda Commissioner, Noreen O'Sullivan, urged people with information on last night's gun attack and the fatal shooting of David Byrne at the Regency Hotel last Friday to come forward.
There's an opportunity to ask anybody that has any information, no matter how small or how trivial or how unimportant that they think it is, in respect of either of these absolutely terrible murders, that they come forward to An Garda Síochána and that they do so in confidence and in the assurance that any information that they have will be treated very sensitively and that An Garda Síochána will take it very seriously and will pursue it.
Non-emergency elective surgery was cancelled at St Vincent's Hospital in Dublin today because of overcrowding in the emergency department. The Irish Nurses and Midwives Organisation said there were 41 patients on trolleys waiting for admission to a bed. Overall, the INMO said the number of people on trolleys in hospitals today was 539. An official in the United States has said that North Korea has restarted one of its nuclear reactors and could soon have enough plutonium for a nuclear weapon. The warning from the director of the National Intelligence Agency, James Clapper, comes in his annual threat assessment. The restarting of the reactor is in defiance of international agreements and is part of an increase in nuclear activity by North Korea. The special hearing in relation to David Drum's extradition from the United States to Ireland has been rescheduled for this Thursday. It was due to take place yesterday, but was postponed because of snowstorms in Boston. Mr Drum is expected to agree to the Irish government's request for his extradition.
RTÉ Radio 1 weather with ESB Networks.
Stay safe. Planning construction? Check with us first for underground electricity cables. For emergencies, 1850 372 999.
Breezy and cold tonight with showers dying out. A widespread sharp to severe frost. Lowest temperatures between -2 and +2 degrees. And there's a warning of gale force west to northwest winds on coastal waters from Howth Head to Mizenhead to Erishead and on the Irish Sea south of Anglesey. Cold tomorrow with showers in the west and north, but mainly dry elsewhere. Sinna Gafoy Benochterish Agahiniag.
Gurmila Mahagat Angus, we're Gade Fontanashig on Late Debate at RTÉ Radio here in studio with me this evening is Mícheál O'Murray running for Fine Gael in Dublin Bay North. Jim O'Callaghan is a candidate for Fianna Fáil in Dublin Bay South. Mícheál Mac Donncha is running for Sinn Féin in Dublin Bay North as well, and Diarmuid O'Flynn is an independent alliance candidate for Cork North West. We're also joined by Colette Brown, a columnist with the Irish Independent. You can contact the programme by text on 51551, email latedebate@rte.ie, and you can follow and engage on Twitter at @LateDebateRTE. Well, as you heard there, the government announced today it's to establish a new Garda force, a new permanent 55-strong armed support unit for Dublin in the wake of escalating gang-related crime. It'll operate in addition to the emergency response unit and the regional support unit. But Mícheál O'Murray, will this be enough, I wonder, to tackle spiralling gang-related crime?
Well, I think it's a good start. It's part of a solution for tackling gang-related crime. I'm representing Dublin Bay North, running in Dublin Bay North, as are others here, and we had the incident, the Regency, and other incidents. The Poplar Row incident is just on the edge, and we had an incident in Condra some months ago. So, you know, it is an issue that has really just started coming up in recent days.
Well, is this a pre-election move? Because why not set up this armed force, 55-strong force after Drumcondra?
Well, it's a reasonable response to, I mean, I think the Regency issue, incident in particular, people were quite struck by that in terms of, I mean, it was blatant, it was during the day, it was fairly in your face, and I think
but
you know, that's part of it.
All gang-related murders are.
Yeah, but just for it to happen in the middle of the day in a hotel where I'm not saying they're not, but for it to happen in the middle of the day in a hotel where there's a crowd of people gathered, preparing for an event, I think that shocked people.
But you could cynically say that the government only moved on this because it's pre-election.
Well, I think the government moved on it because they accepted there is an issue to be dealt with, and it's there. It's not the only part of the solution for this, by the way.
But has this issue not been there to be dealt with since Drumcondra and many other gangland murders?
Serious gangland murders are not going up; they're actually coming down. If you look at the crime stats, they're not heading. It's not going that way. It's going the other way. It's only part of the response to it. Intelligence gathering continues to be part of it and has to be part of the response to this, because you have to gather the intelligence around these criminals.
If gangland murders are going down, why the need for a new force?
Because I think people need to see a reaction and a response to this, and people are concerned about it. There's no doubt about it.
But why not allay their fears, just as you've done now, and say, look, gangland murders are going down?
Well, I think that's part of the solution, but we have to deal with this in a few different ways. We have to make sure people are aware that it's been tackled. People want to see a response in the area, and I think people want to see a response in Dublin. Dubliners want to see a response, and we just need to gather intelligence as well. And intelligence in the medium term is a big part.
We were told yesterday that this wasn't a resources issue. The government announced that, and then today they changed their mind. And I welcome the fact that we are going to have a 55 strong armed support unit, but clearly it was a resources issue. The government hasn't put enough resources into Garda Síochána. They've allowed the numbers to fall down. And in respect of these recent outrages, it's absolutely imperative that we have strong Garda presence on the ground in Dublin. We were able to deal with gangland criminality in Limerick, and to a certain extent it was wiped out in Limerick because the Gardaí were on the ground surveilling them and bringing them to justice before, I should say it, the Special Criminal Court in most instances, and those people, those Limerick criminals, were put away. We have to deal with the Dublin gangland problem in the same way as we dealt with the Limerick gangland problem.
But is this a result of a Fianna Fáil decision to close Templemore training unit?
You can blame Fianna Fáil till the cows come home. You may not remember this. We were going through a serious economic crisis in this country in 2010, 2011. There had to be significant
some decisions, though, were worse than others.
Exactly, some serious decisions. But as we are now told...
I looked back at the Tipperary Star in 2011. Councillor Joe Burke of Fine Gael said at the time, he warned that the fallout from the closure would be seen in the future, with some towns being left without a Garda because of a 2-year gap that will develop between this week's closure and the next proposed intake of recruits. That's coming back to haunt you now in Fianna Fáil.
It's not, Cormac, because Fine Gael are telling us, and Labour are telling us, that we're now in a stage of recovery. And we are getting through a stage of recovery. But unfortunately, the expenditure by the government hasn't been prioritised in certain areas. And the one area that they haven't prioritised is the area of justice and putting more Gardaí on the street. Of course there was a time when the Gardaí were reduced, but we have a recovery according to Fine Gael. Let's invest in Gardaí.
Duscan with Templemore, Risha Govey looks cards out. Templemore, Fianna Fáil pulled the shutters down in Templemore. It has been reopened since 2014. 600 good intake of recruits this year for the first time. 600 coming through. Boots on the ground is part of that solution as well. So it's grand to talk about resources. And thanks to people that have worked around the country, those resources are coming back on stream, so the Gardaí are being recruited and the entry level is coming in.
Mícheál Mac Donncha of Sinn Féin, how do you see this 55-strong armed new force in the Gardaí?
Well, it's only been announced today. I haven't seen the detail of it. But obviously a concerted response is needed to this latest horrific murders and the general threat of armed crime and drug-related crime. It is back to the issue of resources. The previous government, and at the beginning of its term, this government presided over a reduction of the Garda force by 2,500, which obviously has had a huge effect. It is about ensuring that the Gardaí have the personnel, the resources and the intelligence to go after these criminals. Now, the communities that I represent and the communities that Sinn Féin represents across Dublin, these are the communities that are worst affected by drug-related crime and by the reign of terror.
And they're the same
gangsters.
Communities, Mícheál, who would fear going into court to give evidence. Isn't that right?
Well, witnesses, yes, are certainly
and
fearful.
Jurors.
Witnesses are certainly fearful.
And the only way to obviate that is to set up or continue to have the Special Criminal Court.
Well, let nobody try to accuse Sinn Féin of being somehow soft. As I said, on this issue, our communities are the ones that are worst affected. Last week, on my canvass, and as I meet many times, people who are in emergency accommodation, a young mother with 2 children, she was in emergency accommodation in the Regency Hotel. So she was there.
Yeah, but you are
She
soft.
was there, and
You
many
are
others.
soft in this.
Absolutely
You're
not.
soft in
And
the
many
Special
others were
Criminal
there.
Court.
And as I say, our communities are the worst affected.
Take that on head on.
Absolutely not.
You're soft on the Special Criminal Court.
Certainly, no. We have always, and for a long period, we have always opposed the Special Criminal Court.
You have no plan in its
Juryless
place.
court. Sorry. I say again.
You have no plan in its place.
There are adequate. There is adequate legislation. There is adequate legislation. There is the Central Criminal Court. The courts are there. As I say, the most important thing is the resources for the Gardaí, the intelligence and the resources to pursue criminals.
Colette Brown is the Irish Independent.
Otherwise, they won't appear in any court.
I just want to make a point about the Special Criminal Court. There seems to be a lot of confusion about how the Special Criminal Court works, and politicians over recent days have been conflating witness protection with jury protection. The Special Criminal Court is a non-jury court. It is not a non-witness court. Witnesses still have to go into the court and give evidence in front of an accused person. So this argument that the Special Criminal Court somehow protects witnesses, it doesn't. It's a non-jury court. That's it. Now, I think the issue with the Special Criminal Court is being used as a political football, mainly to try and attack Sinn Féin. There are arguments in favour of a Special Criminal Court, but there are also lots of arguments against it, namely the right of a jury trial being one of the fundamental rights in our common law system.
But what if juries are to be intimidated?
But Pat Rabbitte spoke about this actually in 2009 in the Dáil when Dermot Ahern was bringing in legislation that would mean that non-kind of gangland related offences could be dealt with in the Special Criminal Court. And what Pat Rabbitte said, and it's on the Dáil record at the time, was that the Minister had presented absolutely no evidence on that occasion that there was any jury tampering in Ireland. There was no records of any convictions, nothing of that nature.
Are you saying the Special Criminal Court should be done away with?
I'm saying that I think it's used too broadly. I'm saying that if you're up in front of the Special Criminal Court at the moment, you're not going to get a trial for 2 years. If you're refused bail, there's serious issues in relation to people losing their liberty.
Fine Gael want to set up a second one.
No, I think there's still a role for the Special Criminal Court.
No other common law country in the entire world has a non-jury court to deal with gangland crime. So I think that people need to understand that it's an extraordinary measure, and we are an outlier. It's not the norm.
And it's not just Colette Brown or Sinn Féin saying this. Mary Robinson has said this. The Irish Council of Civil Liberties.
I understand there are situations where, Limerick is a classic example where I think there are situations where a Special Criminal Court has a role. I mean, they're not that widely used, but they are used, and I do believe,
it is quite widely used.
I think most politicians, most parties accept that there is a limited role for Special
How often was it used last year?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, then how do you know it's not widely used?
Well, my understanding of it, and others will know more than I do about it, that it's not used that commonly.
Instead of resourcing guards and things like that, what the government keeps saying is, the Special Criminal Court, is that some kind of panacea for gangland crime, when actually it's not. What we need is better resource guards. We need communities in deprived areas to be given additional funding to try and stop crime so that it never reaches courts.
Jeremy O'Flynn wants to get in on this.
No, I just to take up what Colette is saying there, to stop crime. I mean, I just wonder when we will ever learn as a society, because you had prohibition in America in the 20s when you had alcohol was made illegal, and what it gave rise to was organised crime. I mean, and the operative word here is organised crime, because what you created when you did that was you created a market, and you had people who really wanted this product that had now been made.
So
illegal.
what are you saying?
And what I'm saying here is that you have the same thing here. We should be looking here at the root cause of a lot of what's happening here in Dublin and what happened in Limerick. You should legalise cannabis and marijuana. I mean, this to me is the simplest step of all, because
but they're harder drugs.
There are harder drugs, yeah, but I'm saying
heroin and
cocaine.
But I'm saying at least, but if you legalise these, you're taking away a huge chunk of their market.
Jim O'Callaghan.
And no, but just to fill out this one, I mean. When you have this, it's patently, and I've never bought an illegal drug in my life, because I prefer to get my high in a much slower way, and I prefer to get it from life anyway.
From burning bondholders.
but on a serious note, I mean, Like, what I'm told is that there's ready access to any drug that people want on the streets here. So patently, this is not working.
Okay.
So if it's not working, control it. And you then control the quality of it as well.
Does that have merit? Even if, I don't think it does in terms of the argument we're having here, even if we did decriminalise drugs or legalise drugs, it is not as though the people who commenced those attacks last week are going to decide they've been made redundant as criminals and they're going to give up as gangland
not immediately.
No.
The reality
but how would they created, Jim, these organised gangs? I mean, what you did here was you gave them. I mean, the one thing about this thing is the money that can be made. And if I can just finish this,
well, actually,
the money. I'm not finished. The money that these people can make is way beyond what ordinary citizens used to make.
Can I just deal with the point? I think the issue about decriminalising drugs is not going to affect the presence of gangs in our society. To get back to the issue of the Special Criminal Court, can I just give you an example of what happened in Limerick in 2003? There was the prosecution of a gangland figure, Kieran Keane. 729 people were summoned and called for jury service, yet the court could not get 12 of them to sit on the jury. Now, that indicates that the individuals themselves, ordinary citizens in this country, are fearful about serving on juries where you have serious criminals up who are being charged with offences. In terms of the other aspect about the Special Criminal Court, these people killed journalists. If they killed journalists, and journalists they killed because she was writing stories about them that was an inconvenience to them, do you think they're going to stop at killing jurors who can determine whether or not they're going to spend a long time in jail?
Jim, why do you think that Ireland should be the only common law country that uses this as a measure to deal with gangland crime?
I don't care, but can I tell you this? It's in our constitution. Article 38 of our constitution provides that special courts may be established for the trial of offences when it's believed ordinary courts are inadequate.
And the I'll tell you.
My opinion is that in terms of trying to prosecute serious gangland figures who are prepared to shoot people in hotels in front of women and children, who are prepared to shoot journalists, then let's not get involved in a liberal discussion about, well, isn't it offensive to our principles of civil liberties?
It's about fundamental human rights. It's not some airy-fairy liberal
it's in our constitution. If you want to put it that way, ask for a referendum on repeal Article 38.
How do you address the liberty?
Okay.
No, I just want to, if we're going to, let's get down to brass tacks. In that case in Limerick, I mean, how do we prevent, how does eliminating special criminal courts prevent that situation?
The problem I think with the special criminal court at the moment is there are things called scheduled offences, which means if you're charged with a particular offence, you're automatically sent to the special criminal court. It doesn't matter. Nobody looks at the individual case to see whether it's more suitable to be tried in a normal jury court or a non-jury court.
The
it's
DPP
immediately
looks at that.
No. There's a difference between scheduled offences and non-scheduled offences. The scheduled offences are sent straight there. And I mean, there are other things that people can do. So in other jurisdictions, you have things like juries. There's a video link, so jurors are there. You have jurors behind screens, things of that nature. Now, I'm not saying that there's no role for the Special Criminal Court or that it should be completely shut down. What I'm saying is that it's used too much. There are long delays, and that it should only be used in very extreme situations. Like maybe the example you gave there.
Okay, but like the Regency Hotel attack, you would assume that should be the case for a special criminal court.
But I think it would depend on who the perpetrators were alleged to be, where they were from, and the Garda investigation.
Jim, you're also the first man as a barrister to stand up in court, I assume, and say that the accused, his constitutional rights have been breached by the prosecution, and his fundamental right to a jury in certain cases is fundamental to the fair process and fair procedures.
The Constitution provides for the establishment of special courts without a jury. So his constitutional rights have not been violated.
The point Colette is making, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that the Constitution doesn't spell out when those rights are being abused.
Sorry, the Constitution says you can establish special courts for the trial of offences when it's believed that the ordinary courts are inadequate to secure the effective administration of justice. And the prime example of that is where there's a fear on the part of the state that jurors will be intimidated and harassed.
There was actually, if I can make a point, there was actually a review of the Offences Against the State Act in, I think it was the year 2000, by a very eminent judge whose name escapes me at the moment. And what he said, and the conclusion of that report, was that the scheduled offences and the very nature of them could be in contravention of Article 38.1. Because if you read Article 38.1, what it seems to say is that individual cases for the ordinary courts are not adequate to deal with the cases, that it should be sent to the SCC.
But there's no number of cases which are dealt with.
But there's no interrogation of the individual cases.
Special Criminal Court is very quiet. Mícheál Mac Donncha.
Yes, well, the Colette is correct. There was a review of the Offence Against the State Act, including the Special Criminal Court, and that was under the auspices of the Good Friday Agreement. It was written into the agreement as part of that should be reviewed because there was such concern about it, and that was part of the agreement, and the review is carried out. I think I welcome the widening of the debate here by Diarmuid, because what we need to be talking about is how we combat this serious crime, how we combat these gangs, drug-related gang crime. It's not about a court. It's about how are people brought to justice in the first place? How is the evidence gathered? How are resources given to the Gardaí, personnel, intelligence, and
that
so
is
on.
a question, Nisha. That's a question, Nisha O'Murray, because the AGSI, for example, sergeants and inspectors, they this evening have raised questions about this new armed force within the Gardaí of 55 people. They're saying these resources are going to be taken from other areas in the Gardaí. So who's going to lose out?
Well, I think, they're entitled to raise that point, but that is a matter for the Commissioner and then for the Minister for Justice. So the commitment has to be, if we're giving a commitment for resources, they have to be made available.
Yeah, but
I don't expect resources to be taken from one place.
That's what's going to happen.
You're saying
that's. Do you think she's going to magic up these guards?
Well, I think over time the resources will have to be put in place.
So this is not an immediate thing then?
No, I think it'll take time to do it, but the plans...
So when will this force be set up?
Sure, I'm not going to produce the force for you tomorrow.
I know, but have you not been briefed? When will this force be?
No, this was announced today. So there'll be a matter of detail.
Is this a pre-election thing?
There'll be a matter of detail. I don't believe it's a pre-election thing. There'll be a matter of detail.
There's no detail.
Can I just finish the point? There'll be a plan put together, as I understand it, to deliver that.
When?
And I don't believe that it'll be taking from one hand to put resources into the other.
When though?
I don't know. I don't have that. It was only announced today, as I understand.
Yeah, I'm like, can we spend any time at all on going back to actually the root cause of where this is all coming from? By taking away their market, and soft drugs is a huge part of their market. They make obscene profits from these drugs, which is why they do obscene acts to protect their obscene profits.
What you're proposing is highly unlikely, though.
No, I don't think it's highly unlikely. It's already happening in the States and in certain states of America. It's already happening. It's already the case in Europe, in the Netherlands. To me, it makes no sense to let...
But that's only cannabis, Diarmuid.
That's what I'm saying.
No country has legalised hard drugs. Portugal has had lots of success decriminalising hard drugs.
I'm not talking about decriminalising hard drugs. I'm talking about decriminalising soft drugs and controlling and actually making profit from them, because at the moment what you're doing is you're handing over this business, and it is a business, to criminal gangs, and they're organised around it, and they're making massive profits around it.
Will the problem with hard drugs not just still exist? How will that
But it wouldn't be as big a problem. I'm saying, this is a huge part of their market. This is a massive part of their market.
That's maybe open
and I think
to
that's
debate.
actually how they got organised in the first place. But they wouldn't exist in as much and in the same numbers.
Is there a problem?
And I don't think that they would have quite the power.
Okay, well let's hear what people have to say. 51551 if they want to come in on what you have proposed there, Diarmuid O'Flynn. But Mícheál Murray, I wonder, is there a wider problem within the Gardaí here in tackling gangland crime and crime in general, in the sense that the morale within the force seems to be extremely low because of cutbacks?
Well, there's no doubt, but as we said, Templemore has been closed for some time, and it's only starting to open back up again now. The people are only starting to come out of it now. But when I meet Gardaí on the street, they're up for the job. They're going about their business. They're going about their duties. I don't think there are enough of them, but that's part of the issue that has to be addressed.
Well, Damien McCarthy of the GRA, the Garda Representative Association, he said, and I quote, this is some time ago, "We're struggling, but in the lifetime of your government. We're struggling to cope," he says. "Morale is extremely low. We've seen enormous change in the last number of years. Very negative decisions have been made by government. A colossal amount of officers have left the force. And the government is still insisting that the recruitment embargo be kept in place."
Yeah, we have had resource issues in the country generally. everybody accepts that. There have been issues with resource availability of resources. Okay, but that investment is starting to come back into the Garda Síochána now. Vehicles, other technology, the manpower on the ground. So that's coming on.
So can I ask you then a very simple question? Do you accept then that morale is low because of cutbacks imposed by your government?
I don't. I mean, that group is entitled to its own opinion. From my experience of dealing with Garda Síochána, they're going about their job and they're doing that.
They're going about their job, but the question is morale and the decreased numbers within the force and how that's impacting. Are you saying the austerity has had no impact on the Garda?
No, I didn't say that.
What are you saying?
I said that there was obviously an issue of resources for the last number of years. We're trying to address that now. The investment is starting to go back into Garda Síochána. It is needed. Vehicles, technology, manpower. But Gardaí on the streets, the Gardaí that I meet on the street up and down in Dublin on the north side, they're getting about their business and they're doing their job.
Okay,
yeah, I think on the issue of resources is huge, is crucial, and obviously has affected morale. But also the fact that structural reform and fundamental reform of the Garda Síochána did not take place. I mean, look at the situation of this government. A Minister for Justice down, a Garda Commissioner down, the way Garda whistleblowers were treated, the whole GSOC controversy. You know, that is not a healthy state in terms of the policing service and equipping it to deal with the huge challenges it faces. And that structural reform and accountability must be central to actually combating crime.
Okay, 51551, a listener says that guess is absolutely right. Decriminalise drugs, all drugs though, hard and soft, says that texter. Another one, Kevin says, why do jurors have to be identified? Why can't they view and listen to cases via video in a separate room? Tim in Limerick says, hi Cormac, lovely to hear the middle class debating society again tonight. Our areas need more than knee-jerk heavy policing. Please listen to community workers who know what they're talking about. And
I mean, poverty rates in deprived areas, school attendance rates, the rate at which secondary school students in these areas go on to university. I mean, all of these things need huge investment, and that would do much more to tackle crime than any kind of special force that's dreamed up by the Minister for Justice and the Garda Commissioner seemingly overnight.
Con in Macroom says, why is Limerick used as an example for the criminal court? Limerick is still awash with drugs and gangs, says that texter. And finally, a texter says, on the special unit, it's about time the government it's about time to set up the special unit, and the government are serious. I won't read that one, I can't make it out at the moment. Let's move on. 51551 if you want to get in contact with us. Now, I want to play you a clip. Please put on your headphones if you don't mind. Ray Darcy on this station spoke with Father Peter McVerry about the housing and homelessness crisis at the moment, and he spoke about Minister Alan Kelly and the government's role in trying to rectify the crisis. He had some very interesting things to say. Have a listen.
I've met Alan Kelly once, and we actually had a very good meeting, and I came to have a lot of sympathy for Alan Kelly. I think Alan Kelly was the only minister who understood the problem and the only minister who really wanted to deal with the problem. But he can't solve the problem on his own. He requires the Department of Finance, he requires the Department of Social Protection, he requires the local authorities. They all have a major role to play in solving this problem of homelessness, and he couldn't get their cooperation, and so he was stymied, and yet he takes the blame. He takes the blame for the failure to solve the problem. He wanted to cap rents in line with the Consumer Price Index, and Michael Noonan wouldn't let him. He wanted to increase the rent supplement. Joan Burton wouldn't let him. He wants the local authorities to house homeless people, and many local authorities simply do not want homeless people on their books. So he can't get the cooperation of the others, and he was left holding the baby.
Nisha Murray of Fine Gael, that's Father Peter McVerry, who deals day in, day out at the coalface of the housing and the homelessness crisis. It's surely a shocking and a serious indictment of the Fine Gael Labour government.
No, I don't accept that. There certainly is clearly an issue with homelessness in the capital. I can only really, my direct experience is the capital. But there's a lot of work gone into it in recent years. I mean, modular housing is something that I've been involved in Dublin City Council, trying to build political support for modular housing, which brings housing on stream relatively quickly. One of the key issues we have in the city is that there's a new class of homeless people now, which are families with young children living in emergency accommodation. So we have to.
But the man who's at the coalface has said that Alan Kelly has been stymied in his efforts to deal with the crisis.
I
By
mean,
Fine Gael ministers.
No, I don't accept that. I mean, the particular example you gave is around the idea of rent freezing, putting a rent freeze in place. I mean, I see issues with putting a rent controls in place.
It's not just that issue. He says Alan Kelly is the only minister who understood and wanted to deal with the crisis. Just imagine that now for a minute. Let that sink in. This is the biggest crisis possibly that we're facing in society.
No, I don't accept that. I mean, Enda Kenny has been on record. Enda pulled groups together to try and deal with it as Taoiseach. It was clearly a priority issue and still remains a priority issue. Hold on a second. Now, let me finish.
That they're saying one thing in public and doing another thing privately.
No, let me finish.
They're being stymied.
Yeah, no, I don't accept that. I don't accept that they're being stymied.
You don't accept Father Peter McVerry's word?
No, I can understand what Peter McVerry is saying, but I don't accept that they're being stymied. There's a lot of work being done. There's a lot of work being done around the city of Dublin, and I can only really speak about the city because that's the bit I would know best. Even in terms of availability of capital for social housing, getting capital social housing programs moving again, which have not been done for...
That's the bit he knows best.
No, which have not been done for years and years. We have been... The building of social housing came to a halt about 10 years ago, entirely reliant on the private sector, nearly entirely reliant on the private sector. Nearly entirely reliant.
Let Jim O'Callaghan back in.
Punch back in there. Between 2007 and 2010, 14,580 social housing units were constructed. That's a 3-year period. Between 2011 and 2014, when the current government are in place, 1,252 new social units were constructed. What it is here is an issue about priorities.
Yeah. 14,000 units over 3 years. Over 3 years in total. 14,000 over 3 years.
The three of us are members of Dublin City Council, and I would say over 50% of our time, and the most difficult time we've spent on the council, has been in the past 3 years dealing with the housing and homelessness issue. It is now a crisis which is out of control, and all parties in Dublin City Council try to deal with it. Unfortunately, we're not able to deal with it adequately because the government has not provided the necessary funding. At present, there are 44,000 households in Dublin throughout all the local authority areas who are on a waiting list. That's over 100,000 people. Until the government wakes up and realises that this is a crisis of enormous proportions and decides to deal with it as an emergency crisis, we're not going to be able to resolve it.
But surely the crisis has roots in Part 5.
Listen,
which you let Fianna Fáil let developers rig
14,000 units over 3 years.
Let's be very clear.
Let Jim finish.
Can we just, you can blame Fianna Fáil for everything in the history of the state, Cormac, okay? But we are living in 2016. And we're trying to deal with the problems that are facing us in 2016. And I know there's an election campaign ongoing, but can we try to deal and solve the problems that are facing us today? Of course, Fianna Fáil may say, but the big criticism of Fianna Fáil, I thought, was that we allowed too many houses to be built.
Mícheál Mac Donncha.
Well, I mean, let's be very clear. We are facing an enormous housing crisis, the biggest housing crisis in this state probably since the 1960s, or maybe greater than that. It's quite clear from what Father Peter McVerry says, and also, regrettably, what Mícheál Murray says here tonight, that there is not an appreciation, there is not a deep concern on the part of this government.
There is a deep concern. I mean, that's
the homeless
just totally
and
not
housing
true.
Crisis.
That is inaccurate. That is not a fact.
Actions speak louder than words.
Totally inaccurate.
The homeless,
anybody who wants
the 1,500 children in hotel rooms and B&B accommodation tonight, it's a direct result of government neglect.
A year to bring Sinn Féin around
for the past
modular housing, an entire year.
For the past 5 years. People seem to forget that Fine Gael and Labour have been in government for the past 5 years. The minister who preceded Alan Kelly was Phil Hogan, who hardly mentioned housing. He might as well have been in outer Mongolia as far as housing was concerned.
Is too complex
no interest
to blame
whatsoever.
one person or one party?
Well, just to pick up on something that Nisha said, their actions do speak louder than words. And just when the housing market was recovering here was when Fine Gael brought in legislation that made it so much easier for banks to throw people out in the street, to repossess homes. Fine Gael also, in the last few years, did not build the social housing that they could have and should have built, which left them in the position now recently where they went into a panic situation.
The resources are only coming back on stream
where they're in a panic situation, where they've gone into these modular homes that they're getting built now, completely overpriced. There was no tender went down.
Social housing with what money?
This is now. I'm presuming everybody here knows that we destroyed €2 billion last year. I'm presuming everybody here knows that we actually destroyed €2 billion last year. Does everybody know that? Do you know that, Nisha, here?
Destroyed 2
we
billion.
destroyed €2 billion last year. The promissory note. Do you know that?
Please enlighten me.
I will enlighten you then, because you voted for it. Last year, the Central Bank of Ireland...
I personally vote for it.
You did vote for it.
In what way did I vote for it?
Fine Gael, I'm talking about your party. Your party voted for it.
Go on, yeah. This is your ongoing campaign.
It is, yeah. I mean, we've just had the banking inquiry, and poor as it was, there were two significant findings out of it. One was that we could have saved €9 billion had Michael Noonan confronted the ECB and bond holders 5 years ago. This is what our campaign started off on. But a couple of years after that, in 2011, then we got onto the promissory note deal, which was €31 billion. And I'm telling you that in a few years' time, we're going to have another banking inquiry, which will say what we've been saying again now for the last 3 years, that if we confronted the ECB on the legality, the legitimacy, or the morality of the promissory notes, we could save €31 billion.
Yeah, but just so people know, that was restructured into a long-term loan, isn't that right?
No, but this is what I'm talking about. Everybody knew, 2 or 3 years ago, that Mike Noonan and this government was having to borrow €3 billion every year on the promissory note deal to destroy. That he was borrowing €3 billion to destroy under the terms of the old schedule. And all he did on that thing, this great deal that he did, was he rescheduled that destruction of money. The debt did not go away. The promissory notes were destroyed, but the promissory note debt was not destroyed. And under the new schedule, last year, the Central Bank of Ireland sold 4 bonds of €500 million each. And they took that €500 million, which they actually got from the NTME, and they destroyed the money. So that was €2 billion last year of borrowed money that was destroyed.
Your basic point, the general thrust of where you're coming from is you say we have the resources in this country, but they're not being distributed correctly. Is that right?
Well, we're destroying the money. We destroyed €2 billion last year, and we destroyed €1 billion. And they still have. Sorry, Cormac, just to finish off, the people say, why are we still marching after 5 years, which we are? Because there are still €6 billion gone. It's much more difficult to get it back when it's gone. But there's still €25 billion of those bonds sitting in the central bank awaiting the same fate. And that's what we're trying to stop, because if they are sold, that is the legacy we'll be leaving our children.
Well, not only are the resources not distributed justly, we have parties in government actually proposing to compound that by, for example, abolishing the USC for the highest earners. For example, the Taoiseach who would be $12,000 a year better off from the abolition of the USC. So there are plans among Fine Gael and the other parties to actually compound the inequity that's there. This is a matter of policy. People are homeless. People are homeless and without adequate housing.
Where do you propose to get the resources from?
Because of deliberate policy decisions.
Even sometimes it seems when there are the resources there, nothing happens. So there was a story in the Sunday Business Post, I don't know if anybody saw it, about a 500 million fund that was set up by the government about 6 months ago with the express intention of that being used to fund the construction of 11,000 homes. 6 months later, not a single penny from that fund has been lent out, with representatives from the construction industry saying that the terms under which they'd have to borrow this money just don't make it feasible for them to use it. So even it seems when there are specific measures put in place with funding that's been, ring-fenced for the construction of homes, this government doesn't seem to be able to get it right somehow.
And I can give you a very concrete example of that. In my own area, there was a proposal by us to increase the proportion of social housing in a new development. We were told by council officials, well, that couldn't be done, because they were told by the department that the spending would be too much. That would be regarded as excessive government spending. And they went along with that, and as a result, there would be fewer social houses built in this development.
I don't know, in this studio 2 weeks ago, the President of the High Court was on the Marion Finucane show, and he was saying that, what could potentially happen down the road is children who are living in hotel accommodation at the moment suing the state because they were unable. There's a statutory obligation on councils, which I'm sure all the councillors around the table will be aware of, to provide housing, and that's a statutory obligation that is not being fulfilled.
Okay, a number of your texts, if there's a lot of work being done, why has the number of homeless children doubled since last year? Sister Stan gave us that figure today, says John in Dundalk. Joe in Wexford says we should tax the hoarding of land like Denmark does. That would increase housing supply. And Martina in Sligo directs this one at Nisha O'Murray of Fine Gael. The sheer arrogance of that Fine Gaeler. How dare he ignore what Peter McVerry said today and stop harping on about the past or roll on this election.
I don't have to agree with everything Peter McVerry says.
Let's finish what she says. Roll on this election and get rid of the arrogance of this government, says Martine. Do you want to respond to Martine?
No, I don't have to agree. Peter McVerry has his opinions. I have mine. Others have theirs. We don't have to agree.
But the thrust of what she's saying is that you're slightly arrogant in dismissing a man who works day in, day out.
I am not. That's certainly not the case. I've debated matters with Peter McVerry on television and on radio, but I'm just very aware of the work that the City Council does day in, day out to try and deal with this in terms of the calls and the request that goes into the City Council, and sometimes that is undervalued.
Dermot, briefly.
Okay, Nisha just asked you where would we get the resources for this. If I could just come up with 2 points. The FTT, the financial transaction tax, which people are now beginning to reference as the Robin Hood tax. This is a tiny tax on the most toxic of the transactions that take place in places like the IFSC. It's already been adopted by 10 European countries, including Germany, France, Italy, Spain. Ireland will not sign up to it, and the reason they won't sign up to it is because they're afraid of the effect it might have on the people.
IFSC.
Well, it'll drive the business.
The second one then is to actually impose the actual corporation tax.
Sure, we don't have to do it. But
if I could just say this one thing,
it's no good if the business moves to London.
This is my next point was going to be, if you don't mind me saying so, Nisha, like there's this concern that Fine Gael will always express about, possible repercussions of what will happen if we do this. But yet, when they do things like they've done in the last 5 years that hit, and I mean absolutely crush the people at the very bottom, there is no consideration taken about the possible impacts that it has on the people, and the low people. None whatsoever.
Nisha,
none
let him respond.
Yeah, we cannot. I mean, a decision like that transaction tax, that is an internationally traded set of services in the IFSC. London is a similar centre, much larger, close by. The risk with that is that business is driven to London, and we lose that business.
So you're very much anti an FTT.
No, I don't. I would just be very. I'd be very wary of doing things like that.
Is Fianna Fáil wary of it, Jim?
Yeah, I am wary of it, and Fianna Fáil is wary of it. Like it sounds, and I admire, by the way, Dermot's fortitude and perseverance in terms of what he has done over the years down in Ballyhay. But solutions that sound very simple, generally they're not. Like the implementation of this financial transaction tax, it will have severe effects on the IFSC. We've got big employment there. We generate lots of revenues from the state from it, and there's a significant concern that if we put this in, they'll all go off to London.
Is that why multinationals aren't taxed at the correct rate either?
Well, multinationals pay corporation tax at 12.5%.
Not all of them.
Well, they're supposed to.
Not the big fish.
Yeah, it is fairly shameful that people like Google get away with paying small taxes around the world. Well, it's not just an issue in Ireland. You know that, Cormac. Like, look at the deal that George Osborne did in Britain with Google recently. It was a fairly derisory amount of money that they agreed to pay.
Let's get back to...
They hold a lot of cards in Ireland. Google employs a lot a lot of people. And it's easy to bash politicians and say, it's an international issue. We want to hold on to jobs. They provide employment.
And Fianna Fáil are wary of the financial transactions tax. Is Sinn Féin?
Well, we're not proposing that. It's something that we would certainly look at, but it's not in our manifesto.
You're wary of it.
But to get back to the basic question was how would we fund a proper social housing programme? We have provided for that in our manifesto. We've provided that within the dreaded words fiscal space that's there, and there is scope for capital investment, for the investment in the essential social infrastructure, which is social and affordable housing. That is achievable, but you have to have the political will. The problem is this government and the previous government did not have the political will.
Well, I think in fairness to the government, they have devoted, I think, $4 billion towards the construction of social housing. The problem is that this problem was evident on the horizon a number of years ago, and nothing was done. And all of these measures are very late, and they're too late to help a lot of people at the moment. But I think it is worth noting. I mean, not to completely kick the government on this issue, they have acted, but it's the question is their actions have been quite late in the day.
Okay, a texter says, who exactly was crushed at the very bottom? Social welfare has been preserved during the worst crisis the country has ever seen. Is this kind of guff ever challenged in Radio SIPTU?
Chairman had another source of funding. He had a second source of funding, the transaction tax. What's the other source of funding, Chairman, you had?
I was talking about the corporation tax too.
Well, let's move on. I want to talk about a united Ireland, because that's something, a referendum on a united Ireland that Sinn Féin has proposed in its manifesto today. When, Mícheál, and why?
Well, United Ireland referendum is actually provided for in the Good Friday Agreement, that this would be an outworking of the Good Friday Agreement, if that was the will of the people, the North and South, that if there was agreement in a referendum, that Irish unification would be made possible. And we have, obviously, this is fundamental to our politics. We are a United Ireland Party. We're an all-Ireland party. And we want to see Irish unity achieved by peaceful and democratic means. We have a major, over many years, engagement with the unionist community at all levels. We've been centrally involved, obviously, in the peace process.
Yeah, and when would it happen?
Well, as we would like to see it happen as soon as possible, but there has to be, obviously, debate, dialogue. There has to be interaction. There is a lot of integration at present between North and South.
If Sinn Féin were in power after the election, it could happen in 2016-17?
Well, I don't think it would happen that soon, but we would certainly begin the process. We would begin a real intensive debate.
In the lifetime of the next government?
Engagement. It would also require the agreement of the British government to trigger a referendum.
Yeah, would it happen? Would you push for it in the lifetime of the next government?
Yes, we certainly would, yeah.
Would you not be accused of wasting money on a referendum that may be coming too soon?
Well, the referendum is the end of the process, in the sense that we need to have the debate, we need to have the engagement, and we need to focus on, for example, the economic benefits of an all-Ireland economy, something that we have done extensively over the past number of years, and we would welcome other parties and civic society being involved in that. This is all provided for in the Good Friday Agreement.
Fianna Fáil is also a Republican party. A stated aim of the party has been a united Ireland. Would you row in behind this, Jim O'Callaghan?
Well, it is a stated objective of our party to have the reunification of the national territory. My own opinion is that partition was the worst thing to happen to this island. It was a sectarian solution to a political problem. However, if we were here around 100 years ago, I would have thought that there was a certain inevitability about partition when you were talking about 1916, 1917,
back 100 years now to me for a minute. Would you support this?
I'm going to tell you now exactly. Not at this stage, and I also don't think, with all due respect to Mícheál, that Sinn Féin can promote it. The objectives of Irish republicanism are about uniting Irish Catholic, Protestant and dissenter. No entity on this island did more to damage that campaign than the Provisional IRA. They divided people. They attacked Irish people because they were Protestant or because they didn't believe in their political opinions. That has been a very divisive impact on relations between Unionists and Nationalists, and because of that, we need more time to build bridges. Had we not had the Provisional IRA's campaign, we'd be a lot more united.
What about the decades in which Fianna Fáil cemented partition?
Yeah, can I also say, let's look at Scotland.
Abandoned the nationalists of the six counties.
You can come back in. You may have a point in respect to that, but there was a reality to partition from the beginning of the northern state.
What do you mean cemented partition?
Well, because they consolidated their hegemony in this state. They began as a party which claimed to be for a united Ireland, for an all-Ireland republic. But under Fianna Fáil, it was very much consolidated as a
I think that's unfair to De Valera, because there was he was very strong in the Anti-Partition League. He went around the world trying to generate support for opposition to partition.
The proof of that.
But can I make this point,
was shown.
Can I just make this point finally? Let us look at what happened in Scotland. The Scots nearly voted for their own independence. They nearly voted to come together, and the Scottish Nationalist Party was very much a Protestant Unionist party. They were able to bring people together, and we need to do that on the island of Ireland. And unfortunately, the violence has damaged that. But in the long term, we'll be able to do it. We don't want one now; it'll be too divisive.
Jeremy O'Flynn, would you support the referendum?
I really take issue with Jim on that statement about no organisation did more to promote the division and sectarianism and everything else, because I think it's happened long before the IRA in the 70s and 80s. It happened with the kind of governments that you had in the six counties after it was formed. That's what promoted it. And it was the B specials and the RUC and everybody else around them. They were the ones who promoted the sectarianism.
Would you support a referendum, a Sinn Féin referendum on a united Ireland?
I would love to see a united Ireland, and not from the point of view of any chest-beating nationalism or flag-waving. I'm just not into it. But I just think that, like, geographically, geologically, historically, we're one island.
Sense to you.
It makes sense.
It was always my understanding a referendum like that would be based on demographic changes in the north, whereby the Catholic population would exceed the Protestant population, and I don't think we're close to that.
But would you support it?
A referendum on that?
The idea of it, yeah.
And in the next 5 years, well, the idea of it, notionally, yes, but in the next 5 years, no, I don't see it happening at all.
It's going to be very divisive.
Níosh Ó Murray.
Yeah, I just think, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin are trying to out-Republican each other here on my right. I think there's a bit of politics, clearly a bit of politics at play here. Sinn Féin have a constituency to look after. I just don't think it's a priority. It's not a priority issue. If you're talking about economic benefits of a north-south corridor, you can get those benefits. There's plenty of cooperation between Dublin and Belfast. There's plenty of cooperation between Belfast and Dublin already. I just don't. I mean, there's so many other issues. There's so many other issues.
Is a referendum totally off the cards for Fine Gael then?
Is a referendum? It's just
on a United Ireland.
It's not a priority.
I mean, look at the government in the north. Stormont nearly collapsed a couple of months ago. So the notion of a united Ireland when the Stormont is barely holding itself together.
What about Jeremy's point? What if Brexit happens?
What if Brexit happens? In what way? In terms of economics? It's a totally different.
And the border shoots up in the north.
It's a totally different. That's a different issue. We can deal with that when we get there.
I think the concerns.
No, hold on a second now. Can I just address this? I mean, I agree with Jim. I think it would be divisive. We have a number of different groups on this island that need to be heard, that need to be listened to. We need to leave that in the past now for some time, and we could come back to
leave the aspiration of a united Ireland.
It will be divisive, and I don't think we need.
Can I just clarify? My political ambition is to see a united Ireland. My only point is it'll be very divisive if we have one in the near future. We need to start building bridges, as in fairness Sinn Féin is doing up in the north, between the nationalist and the unionist community. We need to build trust across the border. We need to listen to what John Hume preached for 25 years, which fortunately now Sinn Féin is following. And we need to recognise unity will come through unity of peoples as opposed to some coarse vote about who's going to get more in the sectarian headcount.
I mean, there's still a wall that divides Belfast between both communities. So, I mean, let's take down the wall that's dividing Belfast before we take down partition.
And that work is going on. That work is going on. But I think the concerns that have been raised about the British exit from potential exit from the EU show the commonality of interests north and south, and the huge concern that we would have if we had one part of the island in the EU and the other part outside the EU. But there's another aspect to this. We have in the north, in the 6 counties, communities on all sides languishing under a Tory government in London, which controls the purse strings.
But you'd say people here languishing under a Tory government.
Yes, absolutely. They are languishing under a Tory government in the north, where the purse strings are held by London. Come on. The purse strings are held by London.
But why now, Why
it is in the interest. No, I certainly did not. I'm stating the truth.
Why the timing?
It is in the interest of everybody.
Answer Nisha's question.
Why now? Why is it now? Is this an election stunt for Sinn Féin?
Absolutely not. Well, anybody who thinks that the demand for a united Ireland is something that Sinn Féin has raised in the election in 2016, it is fundamental to our politics and always has been.
Yeah.
And it has been in every... No, it's not just now. It has been in every election manifesto that we have had.
Do you think it could be divisive?
There is division there already. This is about overcoming division.
Do you think it could be divisive in this state?
Well, obviously there is political division over this, but we need the debate. You don't overcome division without thrashing it out, having a political debate. Fine Gael have an affinity with the Tory party.
But you can do all that without...
Enda Kenny seemed to be quite happy to have his photograph taken under a portrait of Maggie Thatcher with David Cameron.
There is
an ideological affinity between Fine Gael and the British Tory party.
I think, the real danger with this thing is that it can be presented as it's being argued and presented here now along sectarian, religious sectarian lines, because it's not. I think this is about, about nationalism on one side and unionism on the other side. And I don't think that the lines go strictly down religious lines, and that's the first thing that I think has to be lost here. And the second thing, I'm looking across here at Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, making a political football out of this, which it should not be.
It should not be. Sinn Féin raises. I'm asked the question. Can I say I do not believe it would be that divisive in the south. I believe in the north it would be extremely divisive. There would be a lot of sectarianism in respect of it. I think it would give rise to a lot of sectarian tension in areas where there's tension around the 12th. Can you just imagine what that would be like at the time of this referendum? We need to phase it in slowly. Now isn't the time for it.
I actually think it would be hugely divisive in the south as well. I mean, I think people are just kidding themselves that they think that it wouldn't be. There's lots of opinion polling to suggest that a large minority of people don't want the partition to be taken down. And I mean, I don't think that we should have some, idealistic notion that kind of sentiment out there doesn't exist.
I'll go to the text. Tom says by text 51551, a united Ireland is pointless now. There is no Ireland left. I see moves to rejoin the Commonwealth. He says, hi Cormac, says Jared, I think once there's a relative peace and the bombs, shootings, etc. have stopped on both sides, then a united Ireland is not to the fore for most people. Peace is more important than unity. Tommy in Wicklow says, here folks, we can't afford the 26 counties. We have another 6. Another 6 would break us and put us all in the poorhouse. I'm a nationalist, but we have to be realistic, he says. And one more, John says, bring on the United Ireland referendum. It will be rejected because no one here wants to pay the money the unfortunate English taxpayer now shovels into sinks like West Belfast. Can I bring up the urban-rural economic divide finally on the programme, because Sinn Féin launched its manifesto today, and you had some promises for rural Ireland. Mícheál Mac Donncha, you said you'd redress the imbalance, the economic imbalance. Are you going over old ground? Because Labour also have a plan for this. Fine Gael also have a plan for this. The government seems to be working on this.
Well, I mean, it's good that all parties are focusing on it, because there is a clear deficiency in terms of the resources that are allocated to rural Ireland. We only have to look at, for example, one of our candidates today pointed out that Carl McQuillan on the radio this morning pointed out that in travelling to do a report, he ran out of coverage on his phone. But this is daily life. For huge parts of rural Ireland, connectivity is just one issue. This is supposed to be the engine of the economy, or one of the engines of the economy, and yet vast swathes of Ireland are deprived of this resource.
Can I ask you, Jeremy Dufflin, is the imbalance, the economic imbalance between urban and rural Ireland as bad as people say?
I think it's actually worse. I mean, you know, I've heard about it, I've read about it, but we've covered the entire North West Cork constituency in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And I wouldn't say it's frightening. It's just devastating what you see out there. I mean,
like
there are entire villages that are almost dead now at this stage. I mean, rural Ireland, it's not that it's dying in its feet. In a lot of places, it's absolutely dead. And you see situations where, you know, post offices are gone and Garda stations are closed, and everybody knows about that. But the following, you've got the broadband is an issue, but you've got pubs closed. I mean, entire villages now that have no pub left, no shop left. You know, it's absolute devastation right throughout Cork Northwest, and I'm sure that the same thing applies in rural Ireland everywhere. And I think if there's one positive that will come out of this election, because I don't think it matters who goes back in, I think it has become a serious issue, and I think I'm hoping that it will be addressed. Because
do you think the big parties care about rural Ireland?
I think they do, yeah. I think they kind of lost sight of it for the last few years, but I think that because so many of them are rooted there themselves, you know, they have to care. But I think that they kind of lost sight of it for the last few years. But I think that like there's so much that needs to be done now. And one of the things that could be done, a major thing is employment and trying to get young people back there. But I think that we've got to go back into, like, rural regeneration for me starts with agriculture and with horticulture and a more intensive employment in agriculture.
Okay, did you lose sight of it, Nisha Marie of Fine Gael?
No, I don't believe we did. I mean, at the recent Ardèche, it was coming up.
He's disgusted at you.
I know, I'm happy for him. He's entitled to be disgusted if he wants. We didn't lose sight of it. I mean, it's a common problem internationally that recovery starts in the big cities, and the challenge always is to distribute the recovery outwards from there. But like the job creation figures, the Southeast seems to be doing very well on job creation. The border, their CSO figures, you could take them or leave them. Their CSO numbers, that's a state agency.
If you go to
independent numbers.
Go to FinFact, go to Notes in the Front,
no, I take the CSO figures.
And they will tell you that the real unemployment here, when you take in partial employment and when you take in all the schemes, is near 20% to 10%.
I have full confidence. I have full confidence in the CSO figures.
But if the unemployment rate is low, has come down in rural Ireland, is that because of emigration? Families have been ripped apart.
There certainly is, and there's also net migration into urban centres. I mean, but that happens in other jurisdictions.
Well, it doesn't happen to the same extent as in Ireland. 17,
we're talking about half a million people.
I have to tell you, at the Fine Gael Ardèche recently, it was being raised again and again in terms of the renewal of market and mid-sized towns.
But just in terms of emigration, I think a startling figure is 17% of people who were born in Ireland are actually living abroad at the moment. So I mean, like if those people were back at home, can you imagine what our unemployment rates would be at the moment?
And they should have the right to vote in this election.
Can I try to end on a non-political point? If you had an economist or a geographer who came here and who knew nothing about this island and they looked at it independently, they'd find it extraordinary to look at the imbalance between the economic success or strength of the eastern side around Dublin and the lack of it in the rest of the country. We need to try to bring in some measures to remedy that. Every small town should have some anchor employer, and part of the reason why small towns are languishing is because those anchor employers have left. You know, we spend a lot of time having big conventions and discussions here. We need to have something during the course of the next government about what we're going to do to erase that urban
like decentralisation, Jim.
Well, do you know what?
God, no.
People are very cynical about that, but the intention behind that,
I wonder
wasn't
why,
all
because it was
that
a complete
bad.
disaster.
The purpose, sorry, you can be cynical about everything. The
Jim,
purpose
that's a fact.
behind
It was a disaster.
Just because you say it's a fact, that doesn't mean it's a fact.
It is.
The reality was the purpose behind it was that there was an intention to try to get government offices out of the centre of the city and into rural areas. That's a good idea. It didn't work. It's a good idea.
I have to go. Mawechas Lanisha Murray, Jeremy O'Flynn, Jim O'Callaghan, Mícheál Mac Donncha, agus Colette Brown. Bamidrasha Gajet Amorach. Gajishen Slán agus Bana.
The Late Debate, presented by Cormac O'Hara, was produced by Peter Hegarty. Research was by Annette Egan and Rona Tarrant. The broadcast coordinator was Derek Nagel, and sound was by Bryony October.